Hollywood isn't just shocked anymore. It's flat out shaken. What started as a mystery has now spiraled into something way darker. A fresh forensic report just dropped, giving investigators a precise window of time, and what they found has even the most seasoned experts losing sleep. Authorities say things didn't just explode out of nowhere inside that home. It wasn't sudden at all. Instead, detectives think this was something brewing quietly for a while, like a storm waiting to hit. People close to the case believe the chaos may have started earlier that night at Conan O'Brien's Christmas party. Several guests claim Nick was acting off, tense, jumpy, like something was eating at him. They say what began as a heated argument might have stuck with him long after he left the event, setting up the shocking chain of events that followed.
We were going to war again based on a lie. And it was just very, very disturbing. And there's a line in the film where James Marsden, who plays Warren Strobel, he says, it feels like you feel like your child is running into the street.
After leaving the party, Nick reportedly drove back toward the upscale Brentwood area. Investigators describe his vibe as eerily calm, too calm. Every move he made looked planned, deliberate, like a man with something on his mind. Witnesses and cameras didn't catch anything wild at first glance, and that's exactly what's creeping authorities out the most. Then comes the twist. Records show that Nick checked into a nearby hotel, quiet and composed, barely noticed as he paid and disappeared into his room. But what happened next stunned everyone. Sources confirm Nick contacted Alan Jackson, one of the most powerful defense attorneys in the country. That single move turned the whole case upside down. What happened next shocked everyone. It all moved fast. Sources say Nick pulled off his next move using family inheritance money, and he did it with striking confidence. That decision alone raised major eyebrows. The way he acted, so sure, so quick, made investigators and insiders start asking some serious questions.
Norman Lear was the first person that got me. I mean, I was playing jacks with his daughter. Norman says to my dad, you know, this kid is really funny. My dad said, what, that kid? That kid, he's a sullen. He sits quiet. He doesn't, he's not funny.
According to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, the tragic incident inside the home likely happened sometime between midnight and the early morning hours. What's chilling is that there were no signs of forced entry, because there didn't need to be any. Investigators confirmed that whoever entered knew the home inside out, every corner, every door, every blind spot. By 4 a.m., security footage placed Nick at a Santa Monica hotel, just a short drive, about 20 minutes from Brentwood. Hotel staff later said he seemed calm, almost detached, like nothing was wrong at all. No calls, no messages, just a man sitting quietly, lost in his own thoughts. But as morning broke, calm turned into panic. A scheduled visitor arrived at the house and got no answer. Calls went straight to voicemail. When the doors were finally opened, what was found inside changed everything. Authorities rushed in, locked down the scene, and realized this wasn't some random outburst. It was the tragic conclusion of a night that had been unraveling in silence.
America being the last remaining superpower, what would they do with this power in terms of spreading democracy? And they had talked about going into Iraq in the Middle East and figuring out a way to put a Western-style democracy in the Middle East. Hopefully it would proliferate and then, help Israel and spread democracy.
Earlier that same evening, around 9 p.m., surveillance cameras at an Arco gas station near Exposition Park caught Nick buying a sports drink. He looked restless, pacing, scanning the lot, but still steady enough to finish the transaction. Just minutes later, around 9:15 p.m., LAPD officers working alongside U.S. Marshals spotted him nearby and moved in. There was no chase, no fight, just quiet surrender. He said nothing as they cuffed him, offering no explanation at all. The footage from that arrest doesn't show rage or panic. It shows a man completely drained, emotionally empty, as if the weight of the entire night had finally caught up to him. Hours later, investigators pieced together a haunting timeline. Forensic reports showed the couple had likely been gone for several hours before anyone even found them. That revelation deepened the mystery and forced detectives to face a chilling question: what really pushed things to the breaking point? Authorities suspect that before leaving, Nick may have tried to clean himself up, either at the house or later at the hotel. Even with that, experts say traces of crucial evidence might still be out there. Surveillance footage caught him moving through Santa Monica that same morning, calm and steady, as if nothing had happened. Investigators now believe the object used in the incident came from inside the home, something ordinary, easy to grab, and painfully familiar. That detail hit hard. It wasn't some planned weapon, it was something anyone could have picked up, which made the whole scene even more disturbing. Familiarity suddenly became the most terrifying part. As forensic experts re-examined everything, early theories began to crumble. What was first thought to be a single act turned out to be far more complex. Evidence confirmed multiple serious injuries, changing the entire picture. Professor Joseph Scott Morgan, a well-known forensic specialist, explained that repeated injuries often point to intent and control, not just a sudden emotional burst. He emphasized that situations like this involve proximity, focus, and sustained effort. It's not something that happens in a flash. Then came another grim discovery. Reports hinted that the couple may have been resting when it all began. If that turns out to be true, it means whoever did this knew their habits, their timing, their most vulnerable moments, and used that knowledge to strike. Investigators made one thing clear: this wasn't some detached, impulsive act. The actions taken at such close range showed control, precision, and deeply personal intent. But soon, the spotlight shifted to what happened afterwards, and that's where things got even messier. Reports surfaced claiming Nick once again tapped into family inheritance funds, this time to secure powerhouse attorney Alan Jackson. The public reaction was instant and fierce. People were stunned that he'd managed to land one of the most elite and expensive defense lawyers in the country. Jackson is known for taking only high-stakes cases, and his services don't come cheap. When reporters pressed him about who was footing the bill, Jackson kept quiet, refusing to say a word about who was paying his massive legal fees. But then came the bombshell. On December 18, 2025, several sources close to the family revealed that the Reiner estate, reportedly worth around $200 million, was allegedly covering the costs. That revelation sent shockwaves through both the public and legal circles. Insiders claim the surviving relatives felt that pursuing a mental health-based defense was the most compassionate route forward, something they believed Rob and Michele themselves might have wanted for their son. But even with those intentions, the legal and moral lines started to blur. Under California law, anyone convicted in a case like this can't benefit from the victim's estate, and that fact now hangs over every single decision being made. Each new detail only adds to the tension instead of clearing things up. The deeper this case gets, the murkier it becomes. And here's the twist. While the law blocks a defendant from inheriting directly, it doesn't automatically stop other relatives or estate executors from using estate funds to cover legal defense costs. That loophole has everyone talking, raising more questions about justice, family loyalty, and just how far people will go to protect one of their own. Legal analyst Sean Wessner broke it down clearly. Yes, technically using estate funds for legal defense during an active case is allowed, but it's walking a razor's edge. It's controversial, legally risky, and could blow up fast if anyone challenges it. Some legal experts say an executor could flat out refuse to sign off on those payments just to dodge public outrage or future lawsuits. Right now, no one, neither the family nor the court, has officially confirmed where Nick's legal funding is coming from. And that silence, it's driving the public wild. Speculation is everywhere. People are split between loyalty and justice, between morality and legality, and nobody's ready to take a firm stand yet. Then came the next bombshell. Nick Reiner finally appeared in court for the first time, facing 2 counts of first-degree charges with aggravating circumstances involving multiple victims. The entire courtroom went tense. It was impossible to ignore the weight of that moment. Nick walked in wearing a plain blue inmate uniform, a harsh contrast to the wealthy world his last name once represented. Standing beside him was his powerhouse attorney, Alan Jackson, looking calm, sharp, and fully in control. The hearing itself was highly restricted, no live cameras, no public stream, and that only made people even more desperate for answers. Right from the start, Jackson made his move. He asked the judge to delay the formal arraignment, saying Nick needed more time to decide on his next steps. The judge agreed, officially scheduling the next hearing for January 7th. Until then, Nick remains locked up in Los Angeles County Jail under tight watch. And when he finally spoke, it was only once. In a quiet, almost detached tone, Nick answered a single question from the judge. Would he waive his right to a speedy trial? That brief moment was the only glimpse the public got of him, and it left everyone wondering what's really going on behind those cold courtroom walls. When the judge asked the question, Nick's reply was barely above a whisper. "Yes, Your Honor, I do." That was it. No explanation, no extra words. The courtroom fell silent, and the hearing wrapped up just as fast as it began. Now, all eyes are locked on January 7th, the date that could redefine everything. As the legal fight continues, investigators have turned their attention to a darker, more personal part of the story, Nick's long, painful battle with addiction and pressure. Behind the fame, the privilege, and that recognizable last name was a man who'd been struggling for years. Born in 1993, Nick reportedly started experimenting with substances when he was around 15, and from there it became a relentless cycle that he couldn't seem to escape. Growing up in the public eye, surrounded by expectations and constant comparison, life felt heavy and impossible to control. His parents, Rob and Michele, saw the warning signs early and moved fast to get him help. They sent him to rehab while he was still a teenager, marking the start of a long back and forth between recovery and relapse. Even after multiple setbacks, his family never gave up on him. They offered structure, guidance, and unconditional support, even letting him move back into their Brentwood home, hoping familiar comfort might help him find his footing again. Now, that family history is at the heart of this entire case. It's forcing painful questions about responsibility, boundaries, and how far love can really go when someone you care about keeps falling apart. Those close to the family say Rob devoted years trying to help Nick channel his energy into creative work, hoping that passion could give him stability. But addiction doesn't play fair. It's ruthless. Progress came and went, and what was once a peaceful home slowly turned into a place filled with worry, fear, and emotional exhaustion. Those closest to the family say Rob lived by one rule: a parent never gives up on their child. That belief shaped everything he did, even when things got tense and unpredictable. Friends say his devotion never wavered, even as Nick's behavior became harder to manage and the situation grew more volatile. Eventually, that unshakable love turned into tough love. Rob and Michele made the painful decision to let Nick go live on his own, hoping independence might push him toward change. He drifted from Maine to New Jersey to Texas, chasing a sense of freedom, but finding only more instability and chaos instead. Then came a flicker of hope in 2015. Nick managed to stay sober long enough to collaborate with his father on the film Bein' Charlie, a project that mirrored his real-life battles with addiction. For a while, things seemed better. Father and son reconnected, and trust slowly started to rebuild. But by 2018, that fragile progress shattered when Nick relapsed again, reportedly causing serious property damage during another emotional spiral. In 2020, Rob and Michele once again opened their doors, hoping structure and supervision might help stabilize him. Friends later said their optimism was fading fast. Nick's moods and actions became increasingly unpredictable in the months leading up to the tragedy. That long, complicated family history now hangs over the courtroom like a shadow, shaping how everyone views what really happened. Many close to the case believe mental health and addiction will play a huge role in the defense strategy. Alan Jackson, Nick's high-profile attorney, is known for building arguments that focus on mental state and intent, and insiders whisper that he may argue Nick's years of substance use damaged his ability to control his actions that night. Witnesses from the Santa Monica Hotel even described Nick as appearing heavily impaired in the hours before his arrest. Now, as the case unfolds, the line between past and present is blurring. Every mistake, every relapse, every moment of hope is being re-examined under the harsh light of the courtroom, while the public watches, desperate to understand what really happened. Investigators have drawn a hard line. Substance use doesn't excuse accountability. Under California law, voluntary intoxication almost never excuses a person's actions. At best, it can slightly shape how intent is viewed, and that's exactly where the biggest fight in this case is brewing. Prosecutors are already making their position clear. The signs point to awareness and control, not confusion or panic. They're pointing to earlier conflicts and what they describe as calculated behavior to prove Nick knew exactly what he was doing. If the evidence shows preparation instead of chaos, the defense is walking straight into a mountain-sized challenge. And the stakes? They couldn't be higher. With special circumstances on the table, Nick could face life without the possibility of release. Even without those enhancements, sentencing could still range from 25 years to life. Officials also shut down any rumors of self-defense or accident. There's zero indication this was either. Experts studying the case describe the entire event as one fueled by intense emotion and total loss of control, not by mistake or misunderstanding. But what really amplifies the pressure is the public status of the victims, Hollywood icons with decades of legacy, influence, and deep ties across the entertainment world. And it's not just about the evidence anymore. The witness list is jaw-dropping. Names like Conan O'Brien, Larry David, and Billy Crystal have reportedly been mentioned as potential witnesses, which means this isn't just a trial anymore. It's shaping up to be a full-blown media spectacle. Analysts predict the actual trial might not even begin until late 2026 or early 2027, and talk of a plea deal seems almost impossible right now. Meanwhile, forensic reports place Nick directly at the scene, backed by solid biological evidence and hours of surveillance footage. Adding to the weight of it all, Rob and Michele were elderly, while Nick, at 32 years old, stood in the prime of his life. That harsh contrast makes this case not only legally complex, but emotionally devastating for everyone following it. Prosecutors plan to hammer one key point: the power imbalance and how long the incident lasted both scream intent. They say the evidence paints a picture of control, not chaos. And when investigators retraced that fateful night, all roads led back to one place: Conan O'Brien's Christmas party. According to those close to the family, Rob and Michele brought Nick along because they were genuinely worried about him. His behavior had been spiraling lately, and leaving him alone just didn't feel safe. But from the moment they arrived, witnesses say something about Nick's energy was off. While others laughed, mingled, and shared stories under the soft party lights, Nick stood apart, hoodie pulled tight, eyes darting around the room. Guests described him as tense, restless, almost paranoid. He wasn't blending in at all. Instead, he moved from person to person, asking blunt, awkward questions that left people uncomfortable and confused.
Things really turned uneasy after a short, tense encounter with Bill Hader. According to witnesses, Nick said something abrupt before walking away, leaving an awkward silence hanging in the air. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Laughter faded, conversation stalled, and people began to sense something wasn't right. Michele, ever the peacemaker, tried to smooth things over with a polite smile, while Rob kept a quiet eye on his son, clearly worried. By around 10 p.m., the couple decided it was time to leave. Guests noticed them whispering to each other, their concern written all over their faces. But just as they were about to go, things exploded. Not loud enough to stop the music, but sharp enough to turn heads. One insider claimed Nick suddenly accused his parents of talking about him behind his back, his voice tight with anger and betrayal. Rob tried to calm him, keeping his tone low and steady. "Let's just go home," he said quietly. But instead of backing down, Nick shoved past him, knocking over a small table of drinks. That was the moment, witnesses say, when the whole room froze. No one said a word, but everyone could feel that something far darker had just begun. The moment Nick knocked over that table, every head turned. Security rushed in, and Conan O'Brien himself stepped forward, trying to cool things down. "It's okay, let's get some air," he reportedly said, guiding everyone toward the exit. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Outside, the cold December night air hit them hard. Michele clutched Rob's arm, her face pale and anxious, while Rob spoke softly to their son, doing everything he could to steady the situation. Nick paced by the driveway, hands trembling, muttering under his breath and snapping in short, angry bursts. Witnesses say he suddenly shouted something nobody could quite make out before storming to the car and slamming the door shut. The Reiners drove off quietly, leaving behind a crowd of uneasy guests who tried to pretend the moment would soon blow over. Most thought it was just an awkward family argument, nothing more, but that quiet car ride home would turn out to mark the beginning of their final hours. Later that night, around midnight, neighbors in Brentwood recalled hearing muffled voices and faint arguing coming from the Reiner home. Nothing loud or alarming, just the kind of tense back and forth that sounded like any family disagreement. No one realized what was about to happen behind those walls. By the next morning, that same peaceful house would transform into the center of a Hollywood-shaking investigation. Detectives now believed the drive home was filled with tension, with Nick reportedly accusing his parents of embarrassing him in front of everyone. Rob, always the calm voice, kept urging him to breathe, to relax, to just get some rest once they got home. But that calm didn't last. Once inside, the air shifted again. What started as a quiet argument began to spiral fast. Forensic experts now believe sometime between midnight and the early morning hours, Nick entered the master bedroom where Rob and Michele were resting. What happened next would leave even seasoned investigators shaken. It was the moment when concern, heartbreak, and volatility finally collided in the worst possible way. What drove Nick in that moment is still a haunting mystery. Was it anger, emotional collapse, or something even deeper? Investigators described what happened next as extreme, personal, and deeply unsettling. What makes it all harder to grasp is just how normal that night seemed before everything spiraled out of control. Friends say Rob and Michele had actually been cautiously optimistic about Nick's progress in the weeks leading up to that night. He'd been in therapy, staying consistent with his medication and showing glimpses of stability. Rob had even shared plans for a new creative project they could work on together, something that gave him hope that his son was finally turning a corner. No one could have imagined how quickly all that hope would collapse. The morning discovery sent shockwaves through Hollywood. At first, it spread in quiet whispers, then came the confirmation, and suddenly the entire entertainment world froze in disbelief. Tributes poured in across social media as friends, fans, and colleagues tried to process how a family so admired and loved could be shattered overnight. Before long, attention shifted sharply toward Nick, his mental state, his history, and the signs everyone might have missed. Old interviews started resurfacing, including one where Nick once admitted, "I feel like I was born into a spotlight. I never asked for that." That quote hit hard. It echoed like a cry for help that no one truly heard in time. As investigators continued piecing the story together, they began to tighten the timeline using every clue they had: surveillance footage, forensic evidence, and eyewitness accounts from Conan O'Brien's party. The pattern became painfully clear. The tension at the party, the argument, the sudden departure, and the final hours that followed. Still, even with all those answers, deeper questions refused to fade. How much responsibility do others carry when they see someone unraveling? Where's the line between love and enabling? And just how far can a parent's devotion stretch before it finally breaks? Psychologists who've spoken to major outlets have all described this tragedy as a perfect storm, a collision of long-term instability, emotional volatility, and deep unresolved trauma. Everything that had been simmering beneath the surface finally erupted all at once, leaving heartbreak in its wake. Even Conan O'Brien, who almost never comments on private matters, broke his silence. In a short but emotional statement, he expressed deep sorrow and disbelief, saying he was still struggling to make sense of what happened. His words echoed what so many in Hollywood felt: grief mixed with confusion over how something so devastating could unfold in plain sight. Now, nearly a year later, this case continues to dominate headlines and divide opinions. What began as a cheerful December celebration, a night meant for laughter, friendship, and light, ended up marking the start of one of Hollywood's darkest and most haunting chapters.
It's a painful reminder that fame and fortune can't shield anyone from inner chaos, and that even the strongest families can fight with all their heart and still lose. If this story gripped you, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. Let's talk about it.